guys, so I decided to answer question 2 about the etic-emic distinction. Etic refers to things that are cut across culture or are universal, while emic refers to things that are meaningful within a particular community and not necessarily shared between them. This is found on page 66. I would say the major distinction for the etic-emic distinction is etic studies cross-culture, whereas emic studies individual communities. The way the textbook described this was on page 66, where it was referring to etic as a range of sounds any human can make, whereas specific sounds or combinations of sounds are meaningful to a specific community. Then I expanded this example further, going into depth of other meaningful areas in our lives. The example given was a family. We all have sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews, which is universal across cultures, so etic. But how we address them for each specific community can change. Emic. The next question I decided to answer was question 3 about narratives. The textbook describes narratives as the most basic sense, refers to a recounting of sequence of events that is told from a particular point of view. This can be found on page 70 of the textbook. Narratives are how we learn and understand culture because they provide us with not only a point of view, but it's similar to storytelling in chapter 1, where they provide us with a sense of who we are. But they also are able to provide other cultures with the means of communication to build a better sense of their worldviews, beliefs, values, dreams, norms, and feelings of others. The quote I pulled from the textbook was, "From an intercultural perspective, narratives offer a means of communication by which we can better understand the worldviews, beliefs, values, dreams, norms, and feelings of others. This knowledge, in turn, can enable us to identify places where we can appropriately bridge our differences." This can be found on page 71 of the textbook. What stood out to me in the chapter is in each culture we are all built from the same things. Our worldviews, beliefs, dreams, norms, needs, and narratives make each culture individually who we are. And although we follow the same structure in how culture is made, every culture is different. Specifically, what stood out to me is how narratives really show who we are culturally. On page 72, the text says, "We maintain the narrative's function to teach us how the world works, our place in the world, how to act in the world, and how to evaluate what goes on in the world. Without even realizing in those narratives create our norms, values, and how we see the world." I think for me what needed more information was the etic-emic distinction. Although I think I understood what the text was trying to say, I feel I needed more clarification than the sound example on page 66 and the family example on page 70, because I just saw them comparing the two culture differences rather than two terms. I think the most helpful thing was on page 81 for interpreting narratives, and the text had us look back at La Llorona and try to find the indirect messages and walked us through how discussion of the different types of stories is meant to alert us to many different functions on how the worlds work. It is hard to learn about our place in the world without learning about the way the world works. The example I saw was you could tell Miguel in the Miguel story. Each generation valued its elders before the story of La Llorona was told. What confused me was the Heim speaking framework. I understand why each concept was important, but I didn't understand the example that the text was trying to use.